So, actually, I'm Brian McQuilkin, and as always, joining me tonight is co-host.
Brian W. Stewart, Esquire.
And with us tonight is a very special guest, Mr. Pat Turner. Pat is an incredibly knowledgeable person about all things Walking Dead. So we're going to pick his brain tonight about the season, the comics, and where we think the show is headed next, as well as a bunch of other crazy crap there. But before we get into that, actually say hi. Say hi to everyone there, Pat.
Hi, everyone. How's it going?
They're not going to answer you. It's a podcast. It only works one way.
Yeah.
But before
Our first official guest.
Our first official guest. You are our first guest, Pat. I said Bri.
Thanks.
I feel honored. Thanks for having me.
No. Thank you for joining us. And
Wait till it's over and see if you still feel that way.
I'm sure your attorney is going to enjoy it because
Absolutely.
yeah, he's going to make a lot of money. Anyway, before we get into all that silliness, Bri, can you guess who wrote to us this week?
Speaking of attorneys, is it Anna Kendrick's attorney?
No, it's actually Anna Kendrick herself.
Wow. She from an out to one of her assistants?
No, it's like, she was real upset with us last week, and so I picked up some flowers and some Sherry's berries to send to her to kind of make up for feeling slighted about us talking about Kobe Smulders.
And
I forgot to send them.
damn it.
Yeah, so...
Some stalker you are. You're out of the club.
I know, it's just terrible. So she left a note in my mailbox, actually, instead of an email this time.
Okay.
It read, "Hey, Rumple Foreskin." I guess she got a kick out of the Rumple Foreskin thing.
I guess she likes it.
It was a hit, stick with what works. She said, "I killed your cat and buried it in the old pet cemetery behind your house." Brian, I don't know why she'd do that, because there's a sign back there that says, "Whatever you do, don't kill anything and bury it back here." In the old pet cemetery. Yes, it's English.
Okay, just checking. I mean, it could have been, Irish for all I know for, what you got.
I barely speak English, let alone any other languages.
That's true. I work with you.
If it was like some kind of like old Gaelic or whatever, I'd be fucked. Anyway, so she goes on to say, "Love me, damn it. I deserve the love of a middle-aged fat slob. Love me, or else I'll have to get serious about showing you the length and girth of my affection." I thought that was supposed to be my line. Although I am Irish, I have nothing to do with length or girth. Anyway, look, there's my cat.
Dead or alive?
Oh, it's undead. It's undead, definitely.
Undead.
Oh,
fantastic.
Well. Yeah.
Well, it's a good subject for our for tonight's subject.
It is a good segue into talking about the return of The Walking Dead this season and the inevitable confrontation with Negan.
Negan.
How do you say it, Pat?
Negan.
Thank you.
Right, you were wrong.
No, Negan. That's what he said was Negan.
Okay, and as soon as we get done with this, we'll look into getting your hearing checked.
That's what I said. Booty traps.
Booby traps.
That's what I said. Booty traps. Okay.
Okay, nice Goonies reference.
Yes. So before we get into talking about The Walking Dead and Talking Dead or whatever, we should warn our listeners that we're going to discuss plot points from the comics, which sometimes work their way into the show. We're going to get into some speculation about what's going to happen over the course of this season and upcoming seasons, and we don't know for sure what's going to happen next on the show. There's a chance that some of the stuff we're going to speculate about is going to totally spoil the show for you. So if you don't want to hear any of our guesses regarding what's upcoming on The Walking Dead, turn this off and go listen to the first season of Serial or whatever it is other people do on Friday nights. Go to the Waffle House maybe. So anyway, spoiler warning. Pat, before we get into the nitty-gritty of the latest episode and the current season, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, where you come from. From your accent, I'm guessing you're originally from Kentucky, but I could be wrong.
You in fact, are pretty close. I'm originally from England. I moved here a while back when I met my wife. Married for 9 years now, 3 kids. That's pretty much all the boring stuff. Work in a steel plant, try and get away with doing as little as possible. But somehow they keep making me work, and I get a check every now. Well, my wife gets a check every now and then. So that's me in a nutshell.
Did she get a check from the INS for marrying a transient?
No, you know what? We ended up actually paying them for me to be here.
Really?
She must really like me.
All right. Just curious.
You're living the American dream. You work in a steel mill, and you have 3 kids. That's crazy. It's like you were living the American dream circa 1954.
Yeah, I'm a little late, but I'm catching up.
Yeah, it's well, the next thing is the Cold War, so you got to look forward to that if you're following that timeline. Come to America, you emigrate, get a job at a steel mill. The Cold
English
War,
invasion.
yes. There'll probably be a war in Asia now. So
Right. Sorry. The Asian invasion?
spoiler.
Right.
Okay, so Pat, tell us, how did you first get into The Walking Dead? At what point did you realize you were beyond your normal, everyday run-of-the-mill fan and became like a hardcore Uber fan?
Oh, my favorite movie is the remake of Dawn of the Dead, the one in the ball. So I've always had this kind of zombie thing. You know, it's always interested me. So I saw The Walking Dead advertised and told my wife, you know what, we got to watch this. This looks good. We started watching it, watched the first season, and then I found out it was a comic. I've always kind of been into my superhero comics, so I decided I've got to pick this up and catch up with it. I caught up just in time for issue 100. Issue 100, obviously we're now there in the show, and I loved it. I've kept up ever since. I'm the guy that buys it, you know, every week or every month. I buy all the subplots. Here's Negan that comes out in Image Plus magazine. The books based off of the Governor's group and where they're at now. I play the video games. Just became a little obsessed with it. So it's a good show. It's a great universe to explore. So yeah, I just thoroughly enjoyed it.
Well, if you're going to become dangerously obsessed with something, I guess this is better than Jodie Foster, right? So
I was
and
Anna Kendrick.
you leave Anna Kendrick out of this, all right?
All right.
That she's just off the table. Anyway,
All right.
so you have a passion for zombies in general, then, and that's kind of what led you to this.
yeah. Like I said, my favorite movie is the Dawn of the Dead, the remake of it. It's one of those movies I feel I can throw on at any point and be okay with it.
And what do you think of like these new ones, like 28 Days Later, and
I thought 28 Days Later was pretty good. A little bit slower pace. I must admit, I like the evolution of the zombies running in Dawn of the Dead. I thought that was a really neat idea. I still like the classics, you know, like we're seeing in Walking Dead, where they kind of shuffle along, and you know you can kind of outmaneuver them somewhat, and as long as you don't get pinned down, you're okay. Those ideas are still good to me, but I did like the fast-moving zombies. So they added something new.
Do you like the lighter side, like Zombieland or Shaun of the Dead?
I did. I love both those movies.
Very good.
Shaun of the Dead was great. It's difficult to get my wife to watch that kind of stuff. She doesn't get it. It's English humor, you know.
Hey, I got it. You know,
Yeah.
but of course, I grew up on you know, Monty Python and the original Doctor Who. So,
Right. Yeah, she's full-blown American, unfortunately. So
well, can't have everything. A recent one that I like too, that surprised me, was World War Z.
I was just about to ask you, Pat, what you thought of that, because I was like on the fence about World War Z. I was kind of like, this part of me was like, you know, this blows, you know, and then I was like, like
I really. I'm looking forward to World War Z 2 coming out.
Yeah.
At the end of World War Z, my wife looked at me. She's like, "Is that it? Like, where's the 10-year study? Where do we find out where humanity goes from this?" And I joked with her that, "Hey, World War Z 2," and now sure enough, there comes World War Z 2. So we're looking forward to it. I actually enjoyed it. I thought Brad Pitt was an unusual choice for the lead in that, but you know what? He did good. I liked him.
Yeah. The Resident Evil movies, of course. We'll just, you know, cover that whole thing right there. Another one that I really liked was I Am Legend with Will
I Am
Smith.
Legend was great, yes. Another one of our go-to movies. You know, if we're arguing over a movie, we can grab I Am Legend and throw it on, and it makes everybody happy.
Absolutely.
Now tell me, with Walking Dead, I can't imagine that it's just the allure of the zombies that got you into such like that hardcore fandom where you wanted to seek out the novels and the comics and that kind of stuff. What is it about the show that you find so appealing, or that you think like people in general find so appealing that make it so popular?
I liked the characters. I think you've got to have good bad guys. So when you see characters like the Governor, Shane in the comics, um, and even Shane in the show, like he was the original guy that kind of made me. I wanted to see what happened to him. So going to the comics, and he died in very early on in the comics. And Kirkman actually extended his character for the show because it was such a great character and really extended him. And then led into the Governor, and now obviously we have Negan and his group. I feel like you've got to have those bad guys to keep everybody captivated. It couldn't just be. We couldn't have gone through 7 seasons of zombies. That would have got old a long time ago.
Yeah, the zombies I don't think were ever the bad guys. They were just like just a plot device to cut down the populations and bring everyone into groups and then play the people off each other.
Yeah, they were the situation, and they created all. It's basically a survival. How would you be a Rick? Would you be a Negan? Would you be a Shane? Would you be a Governor? It makes you kind of question where would you be in this scenario, and I think that's pretty cool. I think that everybody would like to think that they would be a Rick. Would everybody be a Rick? I don't think so.
I think I would be a Tyrese.
A Tyrese?
Yes.
You would be dead.
Yeah, I would have a hammer and I'd be very big and black. And then I would take my revenge on all the white people.
That's a different show.
It's you wait. One of these days I'm going to wake up and I'll be like, fuck yes, I am black and I have a hammer.
I'm black and I'm proud.
And I'll just assume everyone's a zombie and I'll go to town. Anyway,
Gotcha.
I find kind of interesting the difference between the comic and the show. Like in the show, in the comics, they use the term zombie. And they categorize them between like roamers and lurkers and that kind of stuff. And in the show, they make it a point that the characters exist in a universe where the concept of a zombie doesn't exist. Like the word zombie doesn't exist. There's no zombie movies anywhere to be found.
No, they purposely avoid it. It adds a little bit of something. Like say in the comics, each group calls it something different. They don't meet up with another group and they're already calling them roamers. Each group calls it something different. Mm-hmm. But they've never called them walkers in the comic, even though it's The Walking Dead and they call them walkers on the show. They don't call them walkers in the comic.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
Yeah, they never.
Well, Rick was going, "We are the Walking Dead," in that. I think it was last season. So I mean, you could look at it that way. It's not the zombies aren't the Walking Dead. It's our characters.
Absolutely.
I found that line, "We are the Walking Dead," to be kind of the book. It's a cookbook moment, But anyway, so Pat, what was your broad impressions of the mid-season premiere? Did you enjoy it?
I did. I thought it was really good. I'm very grateful to have Walking Dead back. It kind of leaves a bit of a void when it's gone. I always look at my wife and say, "What are we going to do on Sunday nights?" And she says, "I guess we'll have to play with the kids."
Damn it, we're going to have sex again. Oh, man.
We when that happens, like 9 months later, I end up spending more money. So
I know. There's things that can stop that, but that's a whole other podcast too. So.
See,
I was very happy with this episode. A lot of it was good to the comics, and a lot of it was completely away from the comics. So I always like when they kind of leave me wanting something and not knowing what's going on. And I always like to know the general direction that we're going. So
I'm not up to this point in the comics yet, like to where we are here. I'm probably probably like issue 60 or so.
Okay. Yeah, this actually took place over issue 108 and 109. That was the main part of this episode.
Yeah, and you just picked up those ones. The current issue was only 25 cents, right?
Actually, that was the last issue. This new that just came out on Wednesday was the regular price, but Image for their 25th anniversary did a week of comics where they were all 25 cents, and Walking Dead was one of them. So.
And didn't you hoard them and then distribute them among the masses?
I did. I actually bought a few from the local comic book shop and handed them out to a few guys at work that liked the show, really just to try and tease them into buying it. Comic books kind of dying art at the moment, and the more people that can just watch the show, they'll avoid the books, and the books are where we're getting the cool shows and the cool movies from. So I like to try and encourage it. So I bought a few copies, and the guys that watch the show at work, I gave them to them, and they took them home and read them. And I actually had a guy come up to me today at work and tell me, you know what, will you pick it up for me every month, and I'll just give you the money for it? Yeah, absolutely.
Pusher,
converted
the pusher. Hey man, you got the new latest issue? Yeah, you got the cash.
Yeah, you give them the first one free, and then you make them come back and pay, right? It's
you get them hooked, and there you go.
You're close enough to Detroit. You know that business model.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've got my comics. I have them delivered to work, and then I open them up in front of everyone, and the guys who I sit with, they're like, "Oh, nerd, geek," and then they're like, "Can we look at that?" And like today, this one guy who sits next to me, he was like flipping through it for like about 20 minutes, and he's like, "Who's this guy? What's going on here? There aren't any zombies in this one." He's like, "Oh wait, no, here they are. Oh, that's pretty awesome." And I don't know if it's going to prompt him to actually go out and buy one or start reading them, but yeah, it's fun to at least get it out there in front of everyone, you know.
Yeah, that's the main point. You know, I mean, even if they only buy another issue, it just supports it a little bit more, and you know, it helps grow it.
And going back to the current episode here, something I found interesting is that Hilltop Gregory gave Rick and the gang the same answer that Ezekiel gave them. If we're gonna like touch on the plot here, you know, it's like both Gregory and Ezekiel was like, nope to Rick and the gang, right? And yet, like, we all look at Gregory as this dumb coward, but Ezekiel's decision, we're like, well, that's understandable. It's disappointing. What do you think? What do you think of that? What do you make of them making Gregory out to be such a dick while Ezekiel gets a pass? Is it because he's got a tiger? Do you think they'd respect Gregory more if he had like a lion or a rhinoceros or something?
I don't think Gregory has the numbers that Rick needs anyway at this point. So I love Gregory's character. I bust out laughing when he called him Ricky, and he keeps getting his name wrong, and he makes me laugh. Like he's so good. But I don't think he has the numbers. I think it would be a good support system for Rick, but he doesn't really have the numbers that Rick needs. The Kingdom does. And some of Ezekiel's top advisors are on board with Rick. And it's Morgan. It's Morgan, let's be honest. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what's going on with him. By this point in the comics, he's long gone. So there is that air of unknown with him, but I'm just not feeling his character on the show. I'm not a fan of his attitude towards everything.
Who's that, Morgan's?
Yeah.
He seems more like this guy trying to reach the Zen. You know, his character's always changing. It seems like he's always trying to figure out what he should be in this zombie apocalypse. In the beginning, he was a dad. And the second time Rick ran into him, he was this recluse trying to block out the rest of the world and live in his own little world and try to ignore everything that was going on out there. And then next thing you know, he was Kane from Kung Fu, walking the earth. And
that was the only way he could cope with what happened to him.
What are you, a psychologist? Shut up.
I didn't like the fact that he felt the need to tell Rick, you know, I killed somebody. Rick's like, I don't give a fuck. I've killed so many people. It's ridiculous. Like, you killed somebody. Way to go. I mean, go sit back down.
And now I haven't gotten to this point in the comics, like I just said there, but my guess is that Negan is going to make a move that's going to result in the death of a bunch of Ezekiel's people, and that's going to push him to join forces with Rick and the gang. Is that what happens in the comics, or?
Yeah, they. It's been a while since I've read this part, so you're gonna have to give me a second to try and remember. But eventually, it becomes too much for Ezekiel. Ezekiel does join. Actually, his tiger gets killed trying to take out one of the outposts. Ezekiel gets overran by zombies, and the tiger jumps in shit to save him. And the tiger actually gets eaten in the comics by the zombies, which allows Ezekiel to get away. Another interesting point in the comics is that Ezekiel and Michonne actually end up together. Obviously, in the comics at this point, Andrea is still alive, and Rick and Andrea together.
Really?
Yes.
Because she was with Dale at this point.
Yes.
where I'm at, he's still with Dale, and she's like in her 20s, it seems like, and Dale's in his 60s, and he's like, I'm an old man. You go on, I'll stay here and die. And she's like, no, I love old men. And I'm like, I have a chance. I have a chance with a comic book girl. So
you just get those really big Sailor Moon girls.
I think that's all you, Bri. That's all you, those Sailor Moon girls.
I have a question.
Yes.
As far as I can remember, recently, an article, I believe, on the show, not the comics, of course. I'm not sure if they tracked this, but on the show, it's only been like a year and a half since the outbreak. Is that kind of how far it's only been? It's been less than a couple of years. I think is how it's working. Is that about where we are?
I would think so. In the TV show, they never really clarify a timeline in either. The only thing we actually have a gap in the comics after All Out War, which we're coming up on. I would say probably end of season 8. They may do like the end of All Out War, which is Alexandria and the Kingdom and the Hilltop versus the Saviors. We actually, after that episode or issue, we jumped 2 years forwards, and that's the only timeline that they've ever actually clarified as saying it's about a 2-year jump. I would think Carl is probably our best gauge of time and how far he's grown from the first one. To keep it true to that, I would say that they're kind of having to. I mean, he looks like he's grown more than a couple of years. Yeah, but
kind of hard with the kids. The second thing was mentioning Carl is that the pervasive theory is that what we're seeing on TV is older Carl's recollection. He's like telling the story from his 60-year-old mind in the future. Has anybody else heard that theory?
Yeah, I've read that.
That's interesting.
I have not heard that, but I like that. I actually, Robert Kirkman has always said that Rick won't make it through the whole series.
Right.
It wouldn't be realistic for Rick to make it through. Yeah. So I think in the comic books, I think where we're at currently, we're coming to a point where Rick is going to die soon. What I would like to see is Rick die under suspicious circumstances, and there'd be almost like a whodunit scenario. We have so many leaders stepping up right now. We could have a big power struggle, and we know one of these people is the one that killed Rick, so we're having to be careful about which one we kind of back to become the new leader of the group. I think Carl would move into that spot. I also think Carl would be the one who ended up having killed Rick, in my opinion.
Carl, really?
I could really see it. He's just, I don't know, there's something about him. He discovered girls a few issues ago in the comics. And you know what they do to your mind. So I just, and the girl that he actually ended up hooking up with is Alpha's daughter, who is the new main bad guy until Negan actually took care of her. So he's got that bad girl influence, and I could see him doing something crazy.
I can't wait to discover girls and find out exactly what it is that they do to you.
That's true.
Yeah.
I think maybe we could turn it to a clue kind of thing. I think it was Negan with Lucille behind the shed.
And if ever you get to check out if you look it up, Pat, there's really cool artwork. I'm sure you've seen it, Brian. With it shows like Carl with this long beard. He's like in his 60s and he's still wearing his dad's hat, and I think he's got his dad's gun and he's got the eye patch, and it's pretty cool. So Google Carl telling the Walking Dead story, and you can probably find it. And so but who are these Garbage Pail Kids? Are they the Whisperers, or are they someone else entirely? Like, were they even in the comics?
They have not been in the comics as of yet. We have a new group coming into the comics now that we don't know anything about. They've just made a couple of appearances, showing up at the typical times when you wouldn't want them showing up. So I have to assume that the Garbage Pail Kids are not involved in the comics in any way at this point. But it may turn out that this new group in the comics has something to do with them. But I actually was talking to my wife after we watched the episode, and she asked me, "Who are these people?" I told her, I don't know. She said, "Well, what is Father Gabriel doing?" I said, I don't know. She said, "You best figure something out to tell these people on the podcast." So I don't actually know too much about them. All I know is that they are gonna be living in some sort of dump or a scrapyard, something like that. They've been nicknamed the Garbage Pail Kids by the online community, and they are actually gonna help Rick and his group. In the next episode, the speculation is that we are going to see some sort of deal struck between Rick and the group, where Rick and his group has to find weapons and ammunition for the Garbage Pail Kids, and that is going to be our next episode.
And that should be like an interesting storyline. I wonder where they're going to get weapons from.
By the sounds of it, they actually are just going to go scavenging, like they do for Negan.
Mm-hmm.
Just solely looking for these weapons to give to the Garbage Pail Kids.
You know, it'd make more sense if they went and just took them from Negan's people.
It would, but I mean...
Then they would have the weapons, and Negan's people wouldn't, and, you know, it would make the war probably that much easier.
Too obvious.
Yeah. I was in the army, and I used to come up with these strategies. I would be like, you know what, why don't we just take all the Russians' weapons? And then we invade.
How'd that work out for you? How'd that work out for you?
No one listened to me.
Yeah.
It's
You should be used to that.
Yeah, and that's how I got kicked out of the Russian army. Anyway, one of my friends at work actually stopped watching the show after the season premiere because of the graphic depiction of Glenn's demise at the hands of Negan and Lucille.
It was the eye, wasn't it? It was the eye.
I think it was actually part of that. He said it was like the graphic content, and also because he couldn't stand watching Rick cry. He's like, that's not the Rick that he knew. It's the bald guy who sits next to me, by the way. Brian knows who I'm talking about there. And but I've read online where like a lot of people kind of echo that sentiment that, you know, that in the part where Rick almost cut off Carl's arm. What was your impression of the season opener as far as that goes? Like, do you think the season premiere went too far, like episode 1 of season 7?
No, I don't. I think it was honestly one of the best episodes I've ever seen. I want to address, I kind of get on my soapbox when people talk about this kind of stuff because...
Please do.
The season finale of last season, people had so much criticism about the way it ended because we didn't get to see who died. And I feel like we kind of, as a community, have lost our sense of suspension and wanting to be left in limbo and the suspense of not knowing. I feel like we really need to get back to enjoying that. That's what these stories are supposed to do. If they told you, you've got no reason to tune into this episode. You already know what happened. So I love the season finale. I love the season premiere that they didn't go with something stupid like jumping into Morgan and Carol's story and making us wait for episode 2 to find out who Negan killed. You know, they gave us what we needed. I was glad it was a double death. You know, everybody knew who he killed in the comics, and I'm saying, how do you top this? Well, you've got to kill 2 of them. If you're going to top them, him being so hated for killing Glenn, you've got to kill 2 of them. I believe Abraham was a good choice. He's outlived his character in the comics. Kirkman wanted to do more with his death. He felt like he kind of threw his death in there for no real reason other than, I've got to do something to spice this issue up. And I feel like they did that by having the double death. So, I really enjoyed it. I think as well, I'm interested to see what it does to Daryl, knowing that he's responsible for Glenn's death. Do you guys watch The Talking Dead at all?
I do watch some of it. I think Brian watches it much more religiously than I do. But
they brought Negan out on episode 1 of The Talking Dead, and they asked him, Chris Hardwick asked, so, you're the most hated man in America, you've killed 2 people. And he stopped him. He said, no. I only killed 1 person. Daryl was responsible for that other death.
Yeah, I saw that.
That wasn't, and that's perfect. That's absolutely the way that I felt watching it. If Daryl would have just shut his mouth and sat down, Glenn would still be with us. Now Daryl has to deal with that. So I think it set up a lot of good stuff for the upcoming season. I don't think it went too far with the blood and gore. There's warnings on it for a reason. It's not something that I let my kids watch. If people choose to let their kids watch it, they should know what they're getting into.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's no denying that the season opener was graphic and really dark even for this show. But it's The Walking Dead, and the show has always been dark and has always been graphic. If you remember, like when Rick and Daryl ripped apart that one walker to see if Sophia was in its stomach, they were out in the woods, and it's like, hey, let's rip open this Walking Dead thing, take its stomach apart on camera to look for a little girl, you know? And then there was the fat zombie in the well that fell apart because he was waterlogged, and pretty much like any scene where a walker eats anyone.
Yeah, when they cut Hope's leg off in the prison.
Yeah.
That was very graphic. But
all the heads in the fish tanks with the governor. I mean, it's like, they only complain when you're killing the main characters, the people that they are invested in, and that's what you got to do sometimes.
Well, yeah, as a showrunner, you need to establish to your audience what the stakes are for the rest of your characters. You need to make it clear that this guy Negan is a really, really bad guy and that no character on the show is safe. Otherwise, why watch if you know that, oh, Glenn's never going to die? There's no tension. Right. If you know that they're going to kill a main character in any episode, it's that, what was that show about Vietnam back in the 80s, Bri? Tour of Duty. Yes.
Yeah,
Tour of Duty would regularly kill off main characters. So you would get invested in someone, and they'd be like, bang, they're dead.
Game of Thrones first season with Sean Bean.
Yep, absolutely. So, let me ask you guys this: what did you guys think about the fake Glenn death, the dumpster?
Oh my God, man! The way how they shot that scene, what I saw, and this is only my opinion, but there was no way that Glenn would have been not bitten, even with that other guy laying on top of him. And there's
his legs, something would have got a scratch or a bite or something.
Oh my God! It was like I had I love the show, and I am like a Walking Dead apologist when they go off the rails a little bit, But that scene, I came in and I was like, when he turned out to be alive, I was just so pissed, And it's like, I know a lot of people complain that they felt like they were jerked around by the show, but I honestly felt jerked around by the way they did that,
Maybe the zombies just weren't in the mood for Korean food.
Oh. Anyway, let's get away from the racism. Pat, what did you think of it?
Get away from the racism. Why start now?
Because I'm out of sake, that's why.
Okay.
I didn't mind the episode. When I thought that they got Glenn, I was like, oh man, what are they going to do with Negan? What I didn't like was the very next episode was promoted as it's a 90-minute special. And then it was Morgan, the entire 90 minutes. It was a good episode to discover a little more about Morgan, but that was not the time for it. I mean, the entire world wanted to know what happened to Glenn. And you left us, I believe it was three episodes in the end. We had to wait until we found out what the hell happened to one of our favorite characters. And that sucked. That was a cheap slap in the face to the fans. So I didn't like the choice of episodes. And also it took a lot away from the Morgan episode because people came away pissed saying that episode sucked. And it didn't. It was actually a good episode to discover more about his character, but you just placed it in the wrong place and it's not what we wanted at that time.
No, I agree. It was a good episode, but the whole time you're waiting, okay, we're going to find out what happened to Glenn.
But you should be used to that. They do that since the beginning. They not go off on tangents, but they tell a complete story of a character or characters in between the movement of everybody else. So they
jerked the audience around with that intentionally. I mean, that was very intentionally jerking people around.
All right, maybe he was just trying to see how vociferous his public is going to be. What
did I tell you about using the word vociferous?
I'm sorry.
What did I tell you?
You said use it often.
No, the opposite, Brian.
Use it more often?
Oh God, now I don't remember what I said.
Right. Okay. So
you bastard.
They were vocal. How's that? They were very vocal about that. And again, yes, I believe it was conscious, but I think he was trying to see how vociferous the public was going to be because they wanted to know the answer, and I think he did that on purpose, but it was a purpose that he took. And
I disagree with that choice that they made. I think it jerked the audience around, and I think that you were wrong to try to apologize for them, just like how you're pronouncing Negan's name Negan.
It's Negan.
That's what I said. Booty traps. Anyway.
Yeah, right. You're from the north.
Pat, let me bring you back to the show itself there. earlier you were like saying how like we're 7 seasons in. How do you think AMC continues to make the show compelling to watch 7 seasons in? Because 7 seasons into any show, viewers start to wane. Like, what do you think they do to keep the show interesting and keep the fans engaged at this point? Other than here's even a worse bad guy.
I think what they're going to do with this is they are going to push ahead of the comics. So there is no guy like me telling everybody, you've got to keep watching because this is coming. When they get ahead of the comics, I think it's going to add that extra level of interest. Kirkman said many times in the letter hacks at the back of the comics that he believes the comics will go on long after the show is dead. He knows the show has an expiration date. I do think that they're going to try, and they've really rushed. I didn't think we'd get this far into Negan's story this quick, but they're really rushing through everything, I believe, to try and get ahead of the comics so nobody knows what's coming. I also believe that once they do get ahead of the comics will take a turn and the show will take a turn and they will become separate stories even more so, not really crossing over much at all anymore.
Oh, that'd be interesting if the same characters but 2 completely different storylines.
Absolutely. So that there's no predictability, there's no anything anymore. You've got the guys that love the show, the guys that love the comics, and the guys that love both. And they're 2 completely different stories from the point that they separate.
What's interesting now is like I'm reading the comics and it almost feels that way anyway. The characters from the show, even though they have the same names, they don't feel the same in the comic books. I can read the comics and I can watch the show, and they seem like 2 completely different experiences that I enjoy immensely, and I get like twice as much Walking Dead as just watching one or just reading the other one. I mean, do you feel that way too? Like you're already getting kind of like 2 different stories?
I do. I love when they do the crossovers. I feel like the Hunter's story in the comics was very much brushed over. It was very rushed, whereas in the TV show, we got a little more in depth and kind of got to learn a bit about them. Same with Joe's gang, the Daryl ended up hooking up with for a while. They're in the comics very briefly, but we got to learn a lot more about them in the show. They kind of went with a backstory. So I do feel like I'm getting the 2 separate elements, but I'm also getting more detail in the show than I am in the comics in places, and more detail in the comics than I am in the show in places. So I'm enjoying reading them together and kind of comparing them.
With the storylines in the comics, is there a storyline in the comics that you're looking forward to seeing play out on the show, or that you would like to see play out on the show?
I'm kind of disappointed that they killed Sophia off, because I like the whole Carl and Sophia relationship where they're kind of interested in each other, and then Carl meets Lydia. I'm looking forward to the end of All Out War, so everybody knows what happens to Negan.
If they follow the story on the comic book.
Absolutely, and if they don't, I'm looking forward to finding out what happens to Negan. So.
And the most recent one was like you said, I believe the most recent one that came out is Rick and Negan are together briefly to try to get out of their situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Rick and Negan actually end up. The gates come down at Alexandria, and all of Rick's people run and leave him, and Negan's the one that runs back to grab him and help him. They're running. Negan runs ahead and opens up a door to a house, and Rick's telling him, "Don't you dare leave me out here." Negan holds the door open and gets Rick in and closes the door before the walkers gets in. And he's asking Rick, like, really? You thought I was going to leave you out there after everything? I compared their relationship to Batman and the Joker, Heath Ledger's Joker, where he tells Batman, you just can't let me die. You need me as much as I need you. That's the Rick and Negan relationship that is playing out in the comics now. Negan wants Rick to like him, wants him to trust him, but Rick just can't do it because of everything that's happened. And they kind of need each other at the moment.
Yeah, someone on Facebook posted on one of the Walking Dead groups, who do you think's going to kill Negan?
Negan.
That's what I said, booty traps. Anyway, yeah, they posted that on there, and I was like so tempted going. I'm like, I don't think he dies. I think him and Rick have a baby together and move to Florida.
Start a band.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Absolutely. Rick and the Negans.
There you go. Or Negans.
Negans.
Rick and the Negans. They could name the baby Negans. Rick and Negan and Baby Negan. Anyway, so I think actually a question that a lot of people want to know, and Pat, you might be able to answer this. Why is Rosita such a bitch to Sasha? I mean, she's hot, and that makes up for a lot, but not enough to make up for how she talked to Sasha.
Just because we're the same guy doesn't make us friends.
I mean, I went back and I watched the episode again just to see that part again, and I confirmed Rosita is definitely hot, but it still doesn't make up for how she talked to Sasha. It's like, why be such a bitch?
I think just because Abraham chose Sasha, he left her. He told her, "I thought you were the only woman in the world. Now I know you're not."
Ouch.
And he left her for Sasha. I mean, I don't know. That's kind of harsh on Abraham's side, but yeah, I don't know. I've speculated. The rumor online is that Sasha is not going to be on the show after this season. So I think we're going to get to see that storyline play out. She signed on to do a new role in the Star Trek TV series. I'm sorry.
True.
So the rumor mill is spinning that she is actually going to take Holly's death from the show.
I've always felt bad for Sasha. I thought that her character in the show was always underplayed, and they really haven't given her enough to do. Who was? Do you remember the guy in, I think, season 5? And I can't remember his name. I'm terrible with names. But there was the one guy who was bit, and then the guys from Terminus, they capture him and they cut off his leg and they eat it, and then he's like, "Oh, haha! Guess what? I've been bitten."
Bob.
Yeah, Bob. And like Sasha and Bob were together back then, and it's like she lost Bob, and then she's got this stuff with Abraham. But I don't know. I feel like in the show they just never really like examine her character enough and give her enough to do. You know what I mean?
I agree. It's funny you mentioned Bob. Actually, Bob is in the Walking Dead novels. Bob Stuckey actually is like the governor's right-hand man for a while. He's an old drunk like Bob on the show, and the governor kind of takes him under his wing in the novels and helps him. And he actually just died in not the last novel, Seek and Destroy, but the one before that. It's called Descent, and Bob only just died in the books in that novel. So his character gets investigated very deeply in the books. He's a great character. They didn't really do him justice on TV. I agree. I'd like to see a lot more about Sasha's character. I think, again, a great character that's unique to the show that they've come up with, and I really, I'd like to see more. But from what I hear,
she always just seemed in the background, or when they need someone to do something, they would use her for that.
From what I hear, her death scene is going to be very emotional. I heard they snuck Abraham in to film a scene with her. For
nice flashback scene.
Yeah, a nice goodbye scene.
Like the dream one, like it was last season where they brought everybody back. Look at the flowers, Lizzie, and there was Sophia, and I can't remember who was hallucinating though.
Oh, yeah, it was like the Thanksgiving at the. I think maybe it was Maggie, because it was did they have like Maggie and Glenn's kid, and they're all having Thanksgiving in the yard.
Yeah.
I was surprised.
They also did this
Go
with
ahead.
Tyrese when Tyrese got bit. They had the governor pop back up, and a few old characters come in when Tyrese was hallucinating as he was about to turn.
Okay. I forgot about that. I like Tyrese in the comics. I hated that I just got to the part, just got past where Tyrese died. Tyrese was beheaded by the governor.
Yes.
They say what happened to Herschel is what actually happened to Tyrese's character in the comics. And I was like sitting there reading. I was like, no, like bad Luke Skywalker reading. But you were mentioning like the novels. And I don't know why I'm like an idiot in retrospect. I'm an idiot, even not in retrospect. But I was surprised to see like the Walking Dead novels. I was at Barnes and Noble like last week or 2 weeks ago with my daughter, and I was going through some of these books, and I saw this like entire section of just Walking Dead novels, and like a bunch all concerning the governor, the rise of the governor, the fall of the governor. How are they? Apparently you've read them and everything. It's how are they to read? Are they actually decent quality novels, or are they?
Yeah, they are. I mean, they're not bad. Let's put it that way. The very first one, you obviously think you know what's going on because you know the governor's character by now. and there is a huge twist at the end that will just throw you for a loop. That changes everything that you think you know about the governor. After reading that first novel, you can throw everything you think you know out the window because it changes everything for you.
That's The Rise of the Governor?
Yes, Rise of the Governor. They're, like I say, honestly, if you want the full Walking Dead story, you should read them just for the extra stuff that they add for the governor's character. They do it very cleverly where you will get to like the other characters. Like I said, Bob is a huge character in there. And you'll end up really liking Bob, and you'll want to read the other books after the governor's gone to catch up with what's going on with Bob and Lily, who is the girl who actually kills the governor in the comic books. She takes over Woodbury and kind of carries it on. So they're good. If you want the full story, they're good. It also, which I really liked, it shows the invasion of the prison from the governor's point of view and how he brainwashes his people and the lies that he tells. So it tells that whole story all over again, but from Woodbury's point of view, and, why they decided to go and attack and all that. So really interesting perspective.
I find that, even though the comic is much more brutal and violent than the show, the characters in the comic, I don't know, in a lot of ways to me, and I'm only, like I said, like 60 some episodes in or issues in, it seems more lighthearted than the show. Like there seems to be more humor. The characters don't seem to be as dour as in the show. Do you find that too? Do you think that's accurate at all?
I think at the stage that you're at right now, where it's all still quite new to them, yes. I think we drop off of that quite a bit. I'll be honest with you, the next few issues after they get out of the prison is pretty boring. It's the Rick talking on the phone to Laurie area, and it kind of drops off for a little bit, but it picks back up when the hunters come back in, and it gets really dark for a while there. When Negan comes in, Negan is hilarious. He is just full of jokes and humor and just inappropriate, just comments all over the place, and he's just very funny. He adds humor to the comic. So yeah, I think we're going to go through from where you're at a dark spell for a while, but when Negan comes in, we'll come out of it the other side when Negan has his good guy turn.
I hear Jeffrey Dean actually pulls him, does the character justice from the comic, that he's very much like the character from the comics. Is that correct?
Yeah, he's so charismatic, and he just enunciates all the right words and just puts a little punch in his lines like you imagine Negan to in the comics, and he's very good. My wife, when we watched it, she was like, "Are we supposed to not like this guy because he's awesome?" I really like him. He's probably my favorite character. Go ahead and kill Rick. Let's just follow Negan for a while.
Well, like I said, it's the bad guy that really defines the show. It's the obstacle that you put in front of your characters that you get to see what your characters are made of, and you can have fun with a bad guy much more than you can with the good guy. Like you said, like the Joker. The Joker is infinitely more interesting than Batman.
Absolutely.
Actors like to play the bad guys.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So what do you think the biggest difference is between the show and the comic? I mean, like, for me, the biggest differences were like there's no Daryl. And
yes.
Carol in the comic is nothing at all like Carol in the show. I mean, nothing other than the name. In fact, like in the comic, for our listeners there, she feels like an outcast after she proposes the idea of joining Laurie and Rick's marriage. She proposes to Laurie, and when Laurie rejects her, she winds up killing herself via zombie. She uses a zombie to kill herself. And then
suicide by zombie.
Yeah, it's like but the characters themselves, I don't know, they kind of take on their own evolution within the show, within the universe of the show. Like Rick is a leader in both versions, but in a lot of ways the Rick from the comic, at this point, at least in the comic, isn't as self-serious and dour as Rick from the TV show. At least that's where I'm at in the comic. But what do you think is the biggest differences that you find?
I think you hit the nail on the head, Daryl. Daryl is a great character in the show. I'm glad he's not in the comics. I don't think we need him in the comics. He adds that air of unpredictability that I need, because I know where the story generally is going. So to be able to have this character who can throw a wrench in the works, and I've got no idea what he can do, and I like that. So definitely Daryl. I like like I say, I feel like the show is going to catch up to the comics very quickly here, and that's when it'll kind of become unpredictable for me, and I'm going to enjoy that. So, yeah, Daryl, I like his character in the show. I don't think he'd work in the comics.
Do you think that the cast is too bloated? Is it as bloated as it is in the comic between the comic and the show? But right now, like, that's like one of the criticism against the show is that the cast is so bloated right now. Which I figure that they just do that so they can thin it out in another storyline.
Yeah. We need people in there that we know their names, but we don't care about. They're the people that you can kill in the masses, and everything's fine. And you can't kill a Glenn every season, otherwise we got nothing left. You've got to have these other people that we can slay down, and people go, oh, that's kind of sad, but let's see what happens next week to our favorite characters. We're kind of like that with the comics, where you have Alexandria and all their people, you have the Hilltop and all their people, you have the Saviors and all their people, and their names and they pop up every now and then. But if they died, oh well.
After I wanted to talk about the Whisperers, because there was one episode where you see these people walk by, or you hear the whispers in the woods, and I read that. Isn't there like a war between the Whisperers and Rick and the gang at some point?
Yeah, there's an arc in the comics called Whisperer War, and it's basically Rick and his group, including Negan, who Negan actually escapes. Rick ends up keeping Negan in a cell for a while. You don't know how the cell gets built. It happens during the 2-year gap. Obviously, on the show, we saw Morgan build the cell, but Negan ends up in there on the comics, and he actually somebody leaves the cell open, unlocked, and he stays in there, and to try and earn Rick's trust. And then somebody actually breaks him out of the cell because they want to overthrow Rick. Negan kills this person and escapes, and he's gone. And he actually seeks out Alpha, who is the head of the Whisperers, and earns her trust, and then cuts her head off and takes it back to Rick. Look, I've come back. Don't lock me up again. I want to help. And he comes back to him. So now Negan is in this war. The Whisperers, they can walk among the dead. They wear the dead skin rather than just covering themselves in the guts. They wear the dead skin, and they kind of use that to shift herds in the way that they want to go. Which, as I mentioned earlier, Alexandria's walls just came down. The herd that was sent there is the biggest herd that we've come across yet, and it was sent there by the Whisperers. So they've got this unique way of turning what is still a large group into a group of thousands upon thousands by directing the walkers with them.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's a very cool storyline. It's still ongoing, so I've got nothing much to add, but it's been very cool so far. I've really enjoyed it.
Doesn't Carl and Negan develop some kind of relationship? I've read somewhere that doesn't Carl go down to the cell and talk to Negan and have these long conversations with him? Yep,
he sure does. He talks a lot to Negan. There's one point where you kind of feel like they're bonding almost more than Rick and Carl. Carl's telling Negan stuff that he can't tell his dad, and he stands up and Negan asks him, "Are you going to come and see me again tomorrow?" Carl looks at him and he tells him, "You know what? One day I'm going to kill you." Mm. And Negan's like, "Well, fuck," and sits back down. But so I think that they wanted you to believe there was going to be more to that relationship than there actually was.
Well, they had that one episode where Carl and Negan were, the whole episode was those two together, and at the end, I was left wondering. I imagine a lot of people were left wondering if Carl didn't have some kind of respect for Negan when he left.
Right.
It's like he seemed to have changed his attitude somehow towards him, but you're not sure in what way. And I don't know if they were setting up something along for those storylines. Like at some point they do capture Negan, like in the comics, and keep him in that cell, and there's some kind of relationship between Negan and Carl.
And this is the kind of thing that makes me wonder if Carl will be the one to kill Rick, because even there, just the relationship that we're already seeing develop between him and Negan, it just I just don't feel like we can fully trust Carl's character. He's a kid. He's making bad decisions. I don't see it ending well for him.
Yeah, in the comics, it started out with him killing Shane, like very early in the comics.
Yes.
He kills Shane while, I think in the show, he kills zombie Shane, but in the comics, he just kills Shane outright.
Yep, he shoots Shane, and Rick ends up killing zombie Shane, actually going back to him much later on to take care of him when they discover that you die and you come back as a walker.
Interesting. How would you like to see the show end? How would you like to see them like wrap up everything?
I think if they're going to wrap up everything, they've got to kill Rick. That's got to be the end of the show. I think they can carry it on in the comics after they kill Rick, because comic book, it's like reading your favorite book, but you only get it one chapter a month. So it keeps you wanting more. Whereas the show, when they come to end it, I'd like to see them end it with a Rick's death and that being the end of it. And that way it really is like we've followed this character from his birth when he woke up from his coma all the way through to his death.
Yeah, kind of like that Lost ending.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I do wish they'd have cut off Rick's hand. I'm going to be honest. I understand the money that would take for the special effects and everything, but it's such a big part of the comic when they're learning. He's having to learn to do everything with his other hand, and there's a part coming up. You're going to come to it pretty soon where he can't even open a can by himself because he has to have Carl come and help him open the can. He's still learning.
Yeah, I was actually found that surprising in the comic when the governor, like they first meet the governor and he brings him into that room and like first thing he does is like chops off Rick's arm, and I'm like, holy shit, like that's not in the show, and I'm like, what are they going to do next? And then, oh my God, Michonne's torture of the governor in the comic. I would have liked to actually seen that play out on TV.
Yeah, in the books, the novels, it goes into even more detail about the governor's torture to her and hers to the governor. But you get it all from the governor's perspective. Oh my God, I don't even, because what she does to him, like nailing him to that piece of plywood, and it's like, it's yeah. I mean, I was like cringing while they were describing that. I'm like, oh God, but I loved it. I'm not gonna lie, I loved reading it. Oh, absolutely, it's the governor actually has one of my favorite lines in the whole comic, and that's when Rick asks what they feed the walkers, and he tells him, "Well, stranger, we feed them strangers." Yes, that was great writing. All right, well, we're just at about an hour, so I think we're gonna wrap this up here. Pat, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I can't tell you how much fun and informative it's been. Before we go, Brian, did you have any more questions for him?
No, I just wanted to invite him down, and we'll all go down and do the Walking Dead tour in Sonoya.
That sounds great. I'd love to do that.
Yeah, we should totally do that, or come down for Dragon Con.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I've never been to Dragon Con. I'd love to go.
Yeah, so
it's an experience.
That's what I hear. And but I'd love to have you on again later in the season, at the very least for the season finale. To come on and while we
anytime you guys want, man. I really appreciate it. I've had a blast.
Awesome. And to our one listener, if you, I assume it's Anna, if you have a question or a comment about what we talked about, or if you want to pick Pat's brain about anything Walking Dead, leave a comment on our Facebook page and we'll forward it to Pat there, or tweet us at Geek B&B, that's Geek B-A-N-D-B, or drop us a line at geekbnb@gmail.com. And if you enjoyed listening to this, blah, 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 subscribe to our podcast and tell a friend. If you have a chance to, go to iTunes and leave a review and rate us, because that helps other people find us. Now the boring stuff's out of the way. Blah, blah, blah. Yada, yada, yada. Stuff that people will never, ever do. But next week, we dive into the world of Star Wars with voice actor and enthusiast of the Holy Trilogy, Anthony Sevens. We're going to talk about everything from the prequels? The People's prequels. Yes. People's Court. To the new movies, to the comics, novels, toys, cosplay, whatever else comes up. We're also going to see if that scratching that I hear right now on my back door is Anna Kendrick. I kind of hope that it is. And at the same time, I'm kind of scared that it is. but I kind of hope that it is. Anyway, I'd like to thank Pat one more time for joining us tonight, dude. It was an honor and a pleasure to have you on.
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys.
And I'd like to thank my co-host, Brian, for joining me once again in this insane endeavor. So you guys have a great night.
Thanks, you too.
Bye, geeks.
I'll talk to you next time, Geek.
Bye.